It didn't make me root for her. Like, when somebody's stupid, I want them to die.
Yeah,
or maybe it's just the case of even in shows, the NPCs are useless.
But it'll be death after they visit instead of before they visit. You got to change that death pattern around some. Welcome to The Right Advice. I'm Randy.
And I'm Amber.
And I'm Lucy, back again.
And we're here to discuss episode 2 of The Last of Us. Let's start with initial reactions. Who wants to go first?
Lucy does. I can tell. I can sense that she wants to go firstness.
I'm biting at it. All right. So I very much still am in love with the TV show. Lots of stuff was different in this episode. So I'm excited to tell them about, and anybody out there who hasn't seen the game, any differences that there might have been, and, just stuff that either I liked better or not.
Awesome.
Or were excellent parts from the game.
Or were excellent that brought over.
Yeah, got brought over. This is going to be a difficult episode for me to comment on. I am well known within my family as a crybaby, so there were a lot of elements in this episode that choked me up, and so I may just let the ladies do most of the talking this time.
For me, I still really, really enjoyed this episode, but I think because of the pacing and the structure, where it was action, no action, no action, no action, action, I noticed a few things that stood out to me as it wasn't believable, or I didn't appreciate it. So I have a little bit more negative to say, but I still thought it was a great episode. I mean, I still really enjoyed it. Episode 2 starts in a flashback to 2003 Jakarta. Military officials bring a professor of mycology to identify a specimen extracted from a human. She identifies the specimen as Ophiocordyceps, which cannot survive in humans. While examining the body of the woman from which the sample was taken, the professor is informed that the woman was not the only person infected, and there are others unaccounted for. Later, the professor informs the military official that there is no vaccine or medicine for this, and suggests that the only thing to be done is to bomb the city and all the people in it in order to stop the spread. Reactions.
I enjoyed it. I'm also seeing a pattern, and actually I'm hoping that they will continue this pattern. So we have, we're kind of telling two stories at this time. I mean, related stories. So we have Joel and Tess and Ellie in the present. And they're also telling the story of how this all came about. So I'm actually enjoying that. And this was effective. I thought that the opening scene was effective last time. And this one is also, especially, so we bring in someone who knows, she's a specialist on these fungus. And she comes in and you can see her hand shaking. Here we go. More excellent storytelling. They're not going to tell us she's afraid. They're going to show us she's afraid. And when her solution is bomb the city, I love that, right? Not that I want to see a lot of people die.
Destruction and mayhem.
Yeah. But because that represents how afraid she is. And to see that scope down the road about how horrible this could be for the entire human race, better all of us die than the world. So, I mean, I love that. That was awesome.
How about you, Lucy?
Oh, so this is actually also new to the show. So this was my first time seeing it as well. And it's very interesting because in the game, you don't really get to see a whole lot of what happened before the outbreak. Basically, you see outbreak night with Joel and Sarah and Tommy, and you don't really see anything before that. So it's very interesting being able to see how this all came about and everything.
I think it was an interesting choice to go back and show us how the outbreak was discovered. And mainly because, for me, it was such an engaging part of this episode. I was sucked in immediately. I wanted to know what was going on with this lady getting taken in by the military, and I felt everything with her. So I thought it was very well directed. But I did have a problem with the whole scene in general, and that was that there was no new information in this segment, except that she suggested the only way to stop the spread is to bomb the city and everyone in it. Everything else at that point was not new information. We knew that this was a fungus that everyone thought could not get into people, but now it has. We knew about the tendrils that come out of the mouth that still have life in them. We knew that the fungus can live in a body even after the body has died. So for me, if I was going to re-edit this, I would say you actually have to cut that whole scene. But I have some conflict with that because I enjoyed it so much, and I do enjoy the format as well.
And I actually totally forgot. So the tendrils are actually new to the show. So the tendrils weren't in the game at all. That is basically what replaced the spores.
Okay. Did they have their own seeming movement in life that we could actually see with our eyes, or?
Yeah, no, so...
I mean, I know they weren't in the show, but I mean, were there things like that in the game?
There were not.
Nothing?
In the game, there was just the zombies and the spores. They ended up... The reason they cut it out of the show was because it's not real... You can't really put that into real life. It's not realistic. Because in spores in real life, you can't really see that, and everybody's going to be infected within a couple of hours. So they were like, that's not realistic to real life. It's fine for a video game.
Game over. That's the end of the show, folks. Episode 1 and done.
Yeah, so that's I was talking about that last episode, and actually, Jock Badaway.
It's Pitaway, I think.
Pitaway. Jock Pitaway.
JP. We'll just call you JP for right now.
He actually explained the spores a lot better in his comment on our last video. I didn't explain them very well. But he did a really good job explaining those in the comments.
Yeah, I think that, for me, I think it was a good choice not to do it just practically, like you said, we'd all be dead right away. Do you like the tendrils, though?
I do. Again, that's more of my gore lover inside, just like loving the little creepy bits crawling out of people's mouths. And I totally didn't notice them in Grandma's mouth.
They moved?
Yeah, I didn't notice those in the first, until, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't notice it until I had slowed the scene down and I looked at it and I went, ugh, no. 20 years later, we are back with Ellie, Tess, and Joel the morning after having escaped the Boston quarantine zone. Joel doubts that Ellie is really immune and wants to take her back to the quarantine zone for someone else to shoot when she eventually changes. Ellie reveals that the Fireflies want to take her west because there are doctors there who are working on a vaccine against the infection and that they believe Ellie is the key to creating that vaccine. Tess convinces Joel that taking Ellie to the State House is the surest way to get the truck they need, and so they decide to continue on with this plan. All right, so any reactions to that bit?
That is the part that I like the least. So for me, I think that we're leaving out some intelligence that I would expect Joel and Tess to do. So Ellie's wound has been healed. So that's obvious that she got bit weeks ago, because if you get a bite, yeah, it's going to take 3 weeks before it's all scarred over like her wound is. To me, that's just being unduly stupid at that point in order to push forward their plot point or whatever it is. Yeah, I know it's more dramatic if Joel wants to kill her because she's infected, but I think they overdid that part.
Well, in my opinion, I think that could just be Joel thinking that she's a ticking time bomb at this point. Like, maybe she didn't turn in the first 24 hours like most people, but she still has a chance of turning. So I think that's why he's still hesitant. She's just a ticking time bomb, to him at least. But I really liked that scene because in the game you don't see a whole lot of interaction between Tess and Ellie, for obvious reasons later on in the episode. So you don't really get to see a whole lot, but I really like what little I saw in the game between them, because Tess kind of takes on this sort of motherly role to Ellie, and I like seeing a lot more of that in this.
Yeah, I really appreciated it, especially for that reason, the motherly role. And actually, my mom was watching it and said, that was awfully parent-like of her to say, I'm going to talk to you like a grown-up. For me, I totally agree with Randy on this one. This scene was probably one of my least favorite, mainly because it took so long. This was about them making the decision of what should they do. And that should have been a very quick, logical reason to continue on. This is the only way we're going to get the truck. Clearly, they felt comfortable enough with her to stay with her through the night. So why are they debating about it now in the morning? So that part I didn't like. The main thing about this scene that I think caused some suffering for the show was it did not depict Ellie in a very appealing light. I did not like Ellie in this scene. I thought she is socially oblivious. And maybe this is tying into the idea that, okay, she's an orphan and she was raised in this school, so she wouldn't have learned these social skills yet. But it almost went overboard to the point that at the end of this scene, I did not like Ellie. I wanted her to die. So I didn't care if she lived or died at that point.
That's really harsh.
It is very harsh. But, when you're an editor, the first thing you're looking for is who is unnecessary and tell them off with their heads.
So don't get on Amber's bad side. I'm just going to warn you right now that you need to be nice to Amber or else.
I do know how to use a sword. But yeah, so that was the main thing for me, was that I felt Ellie didn't seem to pick up on social cues like, you should be respectful to these people who considered killing you the night before. And you should probably not tease them about having the virus when they were going to kill you if you had it.
I liked her doing the
I thought that was funny.
I thought that was hilarious. Stupid,
extremely
but hilarious.
Stupid. But it didn't make me root for her. Like, when somebody's stupid, I want them to die.
I'm just going to go back just a little bit.
Okay.
So Amber and I, right, and I think that the scene is appropriate. It's just too long. So
yeah.
let's hit that. Like, she could turn it any moment. She's a ticking time bomb. Okay, we got it. They overplayed it in this scene, and which really hasn't been the case in this series. They have been very good about subtle showing, not telling elements of storytelling. And this one just kind of beat us over the head with this one point. And I'm with you. Like, let's move on. Let's go. Let's see some zombies.
Yeah, I was ready for those zombies. There are two possible routes to the State House, the long way and the short way. But since the short way is certain death, the trio opts for the long route. In the city, they pass a crater from one of the bombs used to slow the spread of the infection. Tess explains that such bombings worked in Boston, but not in most other places. Ellie tells Tess that she received her bite when she snuck alone into an old shopping mall in the quarantine zone. A bond seems to be forming between the two women, while Joel remains distant. The trio enters a hotel through which they mean to pass, but find the way blocked. When Tess goes off to investigate a way around, Joel and Ellie are left alone and try to make conversation with each other. Neither is forthcoming. However, they have a moment when Ellie asks Joel if he finds it hard to kill the infected knowing that they were once human, and Joel admits that sometimes it is. So, any bits about there?
I do. So they show a bomb crater and they talk about it, and they do bring up that a lot of the cities were bombed by our own government. And I enjoyed that connection to the beginning where the scientist says, we got to bomb our own cities to stop this. And it just gives a creepier feel to the whole thing, that not only is your government not going to protect you, they may actually kill you because you are a threat to the greater good.
Necessary casualties.
Necessary, of course, then they didn't do it right, because if you're really going to do that, you nuke the city to make sure to get all of them. So, but government, they're not very bright, and that's what I would expect from government, is to botch that. However, what I really like about it is, one of the things that kind of annoy me in post-apocalyptic movies is like, oh, it's been 20 years, and you see the cityscape and buildings are collapsed over, and I'm like, that doesn't happen in 20 years, especially concrete and steel buildings, unless you have bombs come in. So I love that cityscape that they do, and now I feel a little bit better about the buildings all like leaning on one another and being totally destroyed. So I felt much better about how the world is depicted in a very short 20 years. So I felt that was a good scene.
Agreed. So for this scene, I had two problems. One of them was kind of an artistic decision. I didn't like that. I did like the bombs because it did explain the buildings falling over, and before I had a problem with that. But when they show the crater, the buildings right next to it are untouched. So I was kind of going, what kind of bombs are these? Were they chemical bombs? Because if they were bombs meant to be explosive, I mean, it's a gigantic crater. You would think that there would be damage to the buildings nearby, but there wasn't any. So, that's on you, whoever was in charge of the set design. Then the same thing with some of the other little things. And these are minor, but like the cars did not have paint etched away. Now, you set a car outside for 20 years in the sun, that paint is going to die. Also, the tires are going to crackle, and some of them looked like they were still in pretty decent condition, even though vines had been growing over them and everything. So these were little choices that I wish had been changed. In the hotel, I had a big problem with that piano. It should not have been playing if it's been submerged in water for as long as it appears to have been submerged in water. Yeah, Dad
mentioned that one too.
And how is it still propped up with that itty-bitty stick, which should have been waterlogged and broken by now? So anyway, I liked how it felt and looked. I liked that there was this weird piano, but it wasn't believable. And I just thought there could have been a bit more effort on the part of whoever was in charge of this to make it more believable in some way. Also, that trolley that she pushes, it should have been so rusted she couldn't roll it. And then the other thing that bugged me about all of this was the party seems unafraid. Now, they didn't give an explanation for why they're not afraid. And they're just talking like normal. They go into this hotel, which is dark and damp, which I think is a perfect environment for fungus. And they're just chatting away like normal. And they're letting the girl run off and ring the bell and all this other stuff. They're not acting like they're afraid, so I wasn't afraid. Does that make sense? So anyway, that bugged me. I wish they'd changed it, but still enjoyed it. So, I don't know. All right, Lucy.
All right, first off, in this section, you get some really beautiful shots of the post-apocalyptic world, and I'm a sucker for that. But then in this, you also get that conversation between Tess and Ellie, like she was saying, about how Ellie got infected. And you kind of get this hint that she's not telling everything to the story, and that she's hiding something back. And obviously, I know what it is, but you guys don't, so.
Definitely don't. Definitely want to know.
You'll have to wait and see. No spoilers for me.
Anyway.
She was a Girl Scout, and there's a secret cache of Girl Scout cookies, and if you eat those cookies, you're immune.
Don't think so.
Yeah.
They'd be really expensive Girl Scout cookies. Although Girl Scout cookies are expensive now, aren't they?
They are.
Yeah.
I remember when they were like $2 a box. What are they now, like $7? So, okay, was that scene, I'm actually curious about the scene in the hotel lobby. How close was that to the game?
It looked very similar. Obviously they couldn't, the lobby itself was kind of like a different shape and everything, but it looked pretty spot on. Like the counter and everything, you do a little bit more like exploring, and there's like little hidden stuff you can find in the game. So you get to see a little bit more of the lobby in the game, but it was pretty similar. I mean, at that point...
Did you look around the hotel lobby when you played?
Oh, yeah. I found all the secrets. Well, not all of them.
Secrets?
Someone's gonna call out in the comments saying, well, did you find this? And I'm gonna have to lie and say I did.
All right, so what did Joel and them miss? What did we not see in the hotel lobby?
In the game, there is a little... I can't remember if it's this hotel or a different hotel. I think it's this hotel. You also they skip a whole lot of gameplay in the show, which is basically them just going through the city. So it's a lot of the same stuff. So I'm not like, how dare they skip through all of this? It's essentially the same stuff, them fighting zombies. But in the hotel lobby, there is a little safe where after you explore a little bit more in the hotel, you can find the combination for it and then come back to it. And there's just a little note in there, and it's cute.
Okay.
They didn't find any like action figures or anything, did they?
No, I don't think there's action figure collectibles in there. No, there's not.
No collectibles?
There is collectibles, but it's firefly pendants. So, like army tags? So they have that for fireflies, and that's the collectible that they have.
All right, pretty cool. How about the section where Joel is left to talk with Ellie? Do we have anything about that bit?
I do. I mean, so this whole thing with the hotel, especially with Joel talking with Ellie, we're seeing some excellent character development. I mean, I'll complain in a lot of shows that we review that they are just blunt force over the head with the character development or no character development at all. And in this is subtle. We are seeing personality coming out from all three of the characters. Tess interacting earlier with Ellie, and then here with Joel interacting with Ellie. So we're seeing that. We're seeing those things come out naturally and in an entertaining way. So I thought that was very excellent. I did note that part of that scene was just beautiful character development.
Definitely have to agree with that, but I felt like Ellie was a little more likable from that conversation as well. So her likability level went up a tiny notch for me.
Yeah, so obviously she is still holding a grudge at Joel for, pointing a gun at her multiple times at this point and threatening to shoot her practically nonstop. But you see her kind of like shut down the conversation, and then she's like, he's trying, at least. She sees he's trying, and so she then puts in the effort and starts asking him, saying, hey, where are you from? What about Tess? Blah, 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 blah.
I did like that. That was a good little play there.
And another thing, it was very small, but when Tess started making noises on the other side of the door, she immediately went, Joel, it's me, don't shoot.
I love that.
Put your gun away.
She knew what he was going to do. Yeah, that was good.
Oh, and I did observe something at that point. So they're going through the city, and Tess, for the most part, does not have her gun out. So to me, that just pointed out how tough Joel must be, because they're in a dangerous area. And I'm just going to trust that Joel can kill anything that comes along. And
or maybe it's just the case of, even in shows, the NPCs are useless.
No.
It's evident later on in the firefight.
We're not supposed to know who's an NPC at this point.
It's already obvious. You played Joel most of the game.
Okay.
Play Ellie for a little bit.
I prefer to think that he's just so tough that she knows he'll take care of any problem.
I think that would be a good
Nothing
excuse.
against Tess, by the way.
If that would be the good excuse for it. I still think she should have had her gun out to make the audience scared. But anyway.
Tess reappears and leads Joel and Ellie to see what really blocks their way. Hundreds of infected lie in their path, as if having spilled out of the nearby building, revealing that the number of infected in the city has grown. Ellie notices that the infected move as though they are connected, and Tess explains that they are. That long fungal fibers grow underground sometimes for over a mile. If you step on a cluster of one of those fibers, any infected who are attached to it will know where you are and come for you. Having no other choice, the party must now take the short, deadly route, which leads through a museum.
Do we want to talk about anything there?
Kind of reminded me of if you get a infestation of maggots or something,
Yeah.
and you reveal it and they're all moving. To me, that's kind of what it looked like, and it was really creepy because of that.
It was gross.
Yeah, so that's another case of the tendrils coming back into play, because, like I said before, these are replacing the spores. So none of the little tendrils letting everybody know, that wasn't a thing before.
Okay.
So in order for the other zombies and infected to get alerted, they have to notice, they have to
hear him or see him?
Yeah, so if one infected notices you, then they're gonna scream and scream at you.
Okay.
And then that affects or alerts the others.
So this tendril thing, since it can reach as far as a mile, is more effective than the scream, I think.
Yes.
And possibly makes them even more dangerous in a way. So they've replaced the danger of spores that can float around everywhere and you can breathe them with now zombies a mile away can know where you are and come after you.
Yeah, so any kind of loud noises in the game. So if a car crashed or at one point something explodes, and that alerts all the infected in the nearby area and they start rushing.
Oh, crazy.
Or it can, in the game, it can start a chain effect where one infected screams at you and then another infected screams because of that infected and then another and then another.
Ugh.
So it's, I don't know.
Be obnoxious.
It would be
all that
obnoxious.
screaming. Do you like that the danger is replaced?
It's very creepy and I like it.
So that reminds me of the version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers with, oh my gosh, I can't think of his name. Where the body snatchers that have been taken over, the people who were no longer human, they were alien, they would do that. They would do a scream. And that was like the best thing about that movie is they would start screaming, and then you'd like have this image along the block, and one would start screaming, and then another would scream, and they'd all start pointing. That was like the very best part. Donald Sutherland, sorry, that's who it was. Donald Sutherland was in it. Super creepy, and it reminds me of that. So if they took that from it, that was smart, because that was a super creepy element for that movie.
When they arrive, it appears that the fungus that had infested the museum is now dried up and dead. This seems to be a hopeful turn of luck, until the party comes across a freshly dead corpse covered in scratches. Joel orders everyone to absolute silence, and they proceed. However, when a part of the decaying ceiling collapses, the noise attracts two infected, but they are not like the infected we have seen before. They are blind, fungus having grown out of their nose, eyes, and forehead, and they make clicking and squealing sounds as they prowl. Ellie gasps at first seeing one of them up close. The two infected hear this and pounce. In the chaos, the trio is split up. Ellie and Joel are tackled by one of the infected, but Joel is able to push it off and shoot it several times in the head until it dies. Then the second infected comes for them, but Tess appears in time to stop it with a hatchet to the head, and Joel finishes it off. Anything for this bit?
It's very interesting. I like how they did the clickers in this. I mean, it's not a whole lot to adapt from the game, just because they look the exact same as the game, because there's no reason to change how they look, because they were still effective in the game and the show. But they still look terrifying. They still sound terrifying, and I love the way the clickers are all fidgety and
I
jerky.
actually heard they got actors who loved the game and understood the movement and could mimic it well. That's
nice.
Who was in it. Yeah.
Okay, and in case you haven't seen it yet, the clickers cannot see, so they go entirely by sound. So the horror elements of this are very similar to A Quiet Place, which was very effective in instilling that creepiness, because it's all about being quiet. And maybe that monster is this close to you, and you've just got to try to breathe as quietly as possible and not move. So, that is quite an effective horror element, and they use that quite well in the scene.
Mm-hmm. And sorry.
No, you're good.
My dad was pointing out, he's like, why can't they just shoot the zombies in the torso? Well, as you know, torso shots aren't as effective as headshots. But also, headshots
aren't always fully effective, it seems.
Well, the clickers, the fungi on their face acts as armor.
Oh, I did not pick up on that, and that's awesome.
Yeah,
so
I don't think they actually even mention it in the game. You can read like descriptions about stuff in the inventory and stuff, so you can learn that the clicker's fungus is just like a shield. But yeah,
okay,
that is what makes them difficult, and you can't, at least in the game, you can't melee them. You have to shoot them.
Okay.
It does come through, because they have to shoot them 2 or 3 times in the head. It's not like the normal one shot to the head zombie kill.
Other than a shotgun, but yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool that it took so many shots to kill them, made them scarier. For me, this scene, I loved it, was really engaged in it, but again, as an editor, I saw things that bugged me. First of all, when they first arrived there, this place they know, though they first arrive at the museum, they know that it has been infested with the infected before. It's got fungus climbing out of it. So they should have been quiet in their approach, but they're standing out in front of this open door, talking like normal, and then they check and see that the fungus appears to be dead, but they're still not sure. They go in not sure what's going on. So I didn't like that they were talking outside this building that could be infested with infected who are sensitive to hearing, and they would know this. Then when they're going up the stairs creak and crash, and that isn't the sound that attracts the infected to them. It's when they get to the very top and the ceiling actually collapses in on them. And I didn't see this infected come running towards them like they came from a far distance. They came walking. So they were right there. But the sound of the creaking stairway before wasn't enough to attract them. So that bugged me a little bit, but again, not too bad. It was just a little minor thing. Ellie bugged me again in this. I thought she was not intentionally, but she was made forcibly clumsy, like stepping on the hand and it crunched. I'm sorry, but a little teenager like that is going to be far more agile and adept at placing her feet
than 2 50-year-olds. She just is. So I didn't like that she was the one who stepped on something. I did like that Joel did, because, you know, he's got enough things he's thinking about, and he steps on some glass. But other than that, I liked the scene. I thought it was intense and it was fun. I mean, well, you know, fun for me watching action. But the design...
Not fun for Joel.
Not fun for Joel and them. I thought that the design was great on the heads like that. I liked that a lot. Did you like it? It was exactly like the game?
Yes.
Nice.
They did it super well on translating it.
It is so good to see that they are honoring the original material so much and in so many ways.
Yes. I'm loving it.
Another thing that I liked about this is that they talk about the infected having died off in here, or at least they think they're all died off. But what we're seeing is the clickers. And so that is, to me, a really great way of saying to the audience, this is a more advanced, this is a later stage of the infection, because the ones in the early stage, they're dead, they're gone, but these clickers are still around. So maybe showing that this, all right, the ones that didn't die off have evolved into this form. And I thought that was a nice touch.
Nice. I didn't even catch that. So is there an explanation? I mean, you don't have to tell us what it is, but will there be an explanation for why some of them survive and some of them don't?
I think it might just be that if they don't find a food source, find enough food for the fungus to grow, the fungus just envelops them. Okay. At least I think that's it.
And Joel does mention earlier that most of them die within a few months.
Yeah.
But he's seen some been alive since the original infection.
Yep.
So he does set the groundwork for the fact that these things don't have a long life expectancy. So a few months is what most of them go out with.
Do you think that there are like known infected who like occasionally come around and they go like, oh, it's blue mushroom face again? Like he's the guy who comes around every once in a while.
They should have a name for one, right?
I remember an episode of MASH, there was this pilot who kept coming to bomb their arms deposit or whatever and kept missing. And after a while, he just was missing every day. He was like 5 o'clock, Charlie. They would go out and they would sit there and place bets on how close he would get. So it was just entertainment for them. I don't know. I know that's like definitely not within this genre, but it's coming into my head for some reason.
In the attack, Ellie has been bitten for now a second time. Joel expresses concern about this to Tess, but Tess retorts that she wished Joel would just take the good news, that she would like to think for once that they might actually win, that Ellie might actually be what they have always hoped for, the key to the cure. Joel still doubts that Ellie is immune, but he does not argue it further.
Anything from that part?
I know Dad has something to say about this.
All right, so for me, that was my favorite moment in the episode. So they're going down the ladder, and Joel lets Ellie go first. And then as she is going down, he glances at his watch. And that's the message to us, here again, show, don't tell, that he is starting to replace his daughter with Ellie. I mean, because his daughter is dead. But he is starting to think of her more in terms of a daughter. And we don't have to hear Joel go like, oh, you're starting to be more like a daughter to me every day. No. We just see that very subtle. And, you know, if you don't pay attention, you miss it and you don't get it. But for me, it is so lovely that is such awesome storytelling, is to throw that little nugget in there if we're paying attention and to see that transformation starting to happen. So for me, I really loved it.
Yeah, like seeing her and dealing with her made him think about his daughter, and the first thing he ends up is like, oh, that's good. That's very subtle. Very nice.
Mm-hmm. And I actually have something to say about this, so if you want, you can go first.
Okay. So I really just the same thing. I liked it. I liked that we saw a little change in Tess as well. So I noticed something, or I thought I noticed something earlier when they were questioning her when they first woke up in the morning, or Ellie did. But here it was manifest. She said it aloud. She said she got frustrated with Joel always looking on the downside, that, you know, she's going to probably turn bad someday. And she goes, you know what? I would just like to think that we might win for once. Yeah. Can you just please? And I've never seen her yell at Joel up till now. They haven't had a whole lot of interactions, but you get the impression that there's simpatico, you know. And here I saw something different, and I liked that a lot.
Yeah, okay, so there is something a little bit different than in the game, which is just, like, 2 lines between Tess and Joel, but I really like those lines. I mean, I get why they didn't do them, because in the game, Tess, in here, you can tell Tess is a little more on edge after the museum scene. Mm-hmm. In the game, she's more the same that she was before the museum scene.
Okay.
So I get why they didn't add that line in, because she's more tense and she's more focusing on herself. But right after Ellie says the interaction between Ellie and Joel, Tess walks up behind them and says, "I get it, Joel. I get it." And then Joel looks down at his watch. So just kind of like Tess, you figure out that Tess knows about knows about Sarah, and that she sees Joel starting to compare them.
Okay, nice.
So yeah, I get why they didn't put that in, because the way her attitude was in that scene, it didn't really fit. But I very much liked that line.
Yeah, I do like that
it's
line,
just
too.
One line, but...
That would have been a tough choice, I think, from the writer's perspective. You know, do we keep this or we not? Because it is a good line. It's great because it calls attention to what Randy was talking about. But then again, maybe it takes away from the subtlety. But yeah, I think it fits more with her situation, that she would be so rattled. She's thinking about herself and how she feels first for once.
Yeah, so. and I like that, because we don't get to see a whole lot of Tess. So I do like that little bit more into her.
Yeah.
Instead of, again, Joel and Ellie, my favorite forever and ever and ever. But I do like that they gave us just that little bit more about Tess.
Nice.
The trio arrives at the State House, only to discover that everyone is dead, having been killed in a shootout between the infected and uninfected. Joel wants to go home, but Tess refuses and reveals that during the attack in the museum, she too was bitten. She urges Joel to acknowledge that Ellie really does seem to be immune and begs him to take Ellie to Bill and Frank and convince them to get her to the doctors in the West. Just then, one of the infected in the room wakes up. Joel kills it instantly, but the body is lying in a cluster of the aforementioned fungal fibers. Back near the hotel, the gathering of hundreds of other infected wake from their sleep and sprint towards the State House. Knowing that they have only seconds, Tess pours gasoline over the floor and says that she will stop the infected from following Joel and Ellie. She pleads with Joel to leave her and save who he can. With only a final, silent look of farewell at Tess, Joel drags the protesting Ellie away, and Tess is left to wait for the infected to come and then set the building ablaze.
And what I tell you, I said last week, they'll be all dead.
Yep, I did. And I made sure to, hint behind their backs.
So something that you said, though, threw me off, because you said that Fedra was there. And so I was like...
They were in the game.
So what was different about this scene than in the game?
So in the game, it's flooded outside. So this is where you figure out Ellie can't swim. So very small difference, doesn't really matter. But then they show up inside, and they find all the fireflies dead. We don't figure out why they died. At least I don't think so. I remember there being a note, but I don't remember what the note was. So we don't figure out how the fireflies
You can't remember
died.
everything.
And to be fair, while we're watching it, we're not sure how they died, because it kind of looked like they were all shot up. So it could have been another force came in, and they had a battle.
Yeah, and I wasn't satisfied with Joel's conclusion of what happened. So I think I would hope it was something else. But
but then they come in, they find all the fireflies, and then Tess has her little freak out saying, "No, we need to find them. We need to figure out what's going on." And
this is where the major spoiler comes in.
Tess dies. Anyway, so then in that she has her little freak out, and then she's like, "Joel, you gotta. She's important." I mean, she does the whole look at hers. Hers is 3 weeks old. Like, we got bit at the same time. Hers is fine, and mine already is spreading.
Yeah.
And then Fedra shows up, and then Joel and Ellie trail off, and then you go up to a balcony above that little area.
Okay.
And then you see Tess surrounded by Fedra agents, like dead Fedra agents. So you see Tess's body, and you see a couple of Fedra agents that she was able to shoot before she got shot.
Okay.
So in that, it wasn't infected that came up.
So I think this was way better. Based on what you just told me, I didn't know that until just now. What they showed, I feel, is way more effective than that.
How did you felt the same way? Tough choice.
Tough choice.
Yeah.
Because I do like the way that they did the infected, and I like how they've adapted the infected in the show. But I also just really like the shot of them seeing Tess, like, being able to have taken out, like, and given them a head start against the Fedra agents.
Yeah.
And then there's also a very small line where Joel just says, like, damn it, Tess, or something like that. Just, like, under his breath. But, yeah. So
something other than the silence that we saw that whole
yes,
time.
And
heartbreaking.
It's not a super big spoiler, but at the end of the game, very, very end of the game, Joel says to Ellie, you keep finding something to fight for, which is how he lived through the last 20 years, how he lived through Sarah, how he lived through anybody else who has come and gone through his life. And so I think they're kind of hinting at that with Tess's little, you have to save who you can.
Oh, what a great line.
You find somebody, you find something to fight for.
Yeah.
And Ellie at that point was that, and it was no longer Tess that he fought for.
Nice.
Oh, because Tess knew she'd been bitten.
It was over.
Even if they did, the Fireflies were there, or their Fireflies weren't there anymore, so there wasn't any way for her to have survived.
Nice. For this scene, I had a couple things that I didn't like. I didn't believe that a bunch of infected killed a bunch of armed guys, even if they still had their mental faculties about them. Because if that's what happened, think about this. Somebody gets infected and realizes they're infected and freaks out. All these people around them who are like, we need to kill this guy, are his buddies or her buddies. So he's going to shoot them? I didn't believe that at all. And even if several people had gotten bit, somebody among them is not going to fight back. They're just going to let themselves get killed. So unless this was like a 50-50 battle, it didn't make any sense to me that everybody is dead shot up. So I would have preferred that Fedra was there and we saw like dead Fedra agents or something. I just didn't believe that. Let's see. Tess being turned and bitten. Okay. This bugged me a lot. She was bit on the neck. We know it takes 5 to 15 minutes for it to get from your neck to you've lost it and you're a monster now. So it definitely took more than 15 minutes for them to get to the Capitol building. It was 12 minutes in the episode, but that was just what we saw. There's a lot of stuff skipping ahead, skipping past them getting out of the museum, skipping past them getting out of, walking down the street, whatever. So it was well past, I would say, a half an hour before she finally blows herself up, but she still had her faculties. She was still there. So she was putting Ellie and Joel at risk this whole time. So I didn't like that. And I don't know, maybe they could get away with changing the rules or saying that sometimes it's faster in other people or not in others, but that bugged me, and I hope that they come up with a reason for that. I did catch that it seems Tess was in love with Joel, but he isn't in love with her, because she says, I've never asked you to feel the way that I feel. And the only hint we have seen of that up until now is the first scene we see Tess and Joel together when she climbs into bed with him and she puts her arms around him. And then he's not really romantic. They're not romantic other than that. I would have maybe liked to have seen sort of a longing from her to be with him up until this point, just so it's a little bit more heartbreaking that she is acknowledging that we're not together and I've never asked you to love me. And you see him almost regretting that. But this is like a revelation. Like, oh, by the way, I've been in love with you this whole time. And it could have been amped up a bit better. I like that Joel still acted in character. But yeah, other than the things that I mentioned, I thought, again, the scene was great. The first time I watched looked like a kiss at the end, I was really bugged by it. I thought it was melodramatic. But then thinking about it more, it seems that the tendrils were just seeking the easiest access. I didn't like that she just stood there and let it happen, but I guess maybe she could have been starting to lose her mind at that point.
It was really gross.
It was extremely gross, but I felt like, so I have a professor who told me that anything that's put in there for the sake of shock value is the same thing as pornography. It's just put in there to be this showy thing that we can all look at and go like, ooh, or ugh, or like, And I didn't like that, but there is, I think, a reason for why that happened, and that is that it was just slowly seeking the easiest access into that human body. So that worked, but again, why did she stand there? I guess I just have to come up with my own conclusions, even though they weren't. I guess you could say it's, the looseness of the rules allows you to come up with excuses, but maybe I would have liked to have seen something up to this point that would have suggested she would willingly let that happen, or that she felt her brain going, or that that's what it does, that it tries for the easiest access point first. So, anyway.
So the infected that goes up to Tess and the whole weird kiss scene, it was very fun to see his character design. Because that's kind of like the in-between stage between runner and clicker. And you don't really see those in the game. In the game, you see runners and you see clickers, but you don't really see the in-between stage where they've started to go blind and there's some fungus, but, they still have some of their vision. So you can kind of see how his eyes were kind of clouding over. So he was probably partially blind. And you could kind of see some fungus on the side of his face. But it was very, very fun to see that in-between stage that you didn't really get to see in the game.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I didn't even pick up that he was in between. I guess that would explain why he noticed her, because maybe everybody else was blind. Or maybe they weren't,
I think
they
were
running.
Runners, and they were just too focused on Joel and Ellie, and she was being quiet, so they didn't hear her.
Gotcha. But nice, good pickup on the in-between stage. That I'm gonna have to watch again and look for the cloudy eyes.
Yeah,
Mostly I was just going...
He was very cool looking. I liked his character design.
Okay, I'm going to see if I can mention some of this without getting all weepy. So for me, this is a super... What?
Nothing?
Yeah, Lucy doubts that I can do that, and I kind of doubt it too. All right, so I have talked on the show before about emotionally what resonates with us tend to be core values. So honor, selfless love, service, salvation, sacrifice. And I don't mean these in a religious way, because there's a lot of situations where a person can sacrifice or be redeemed or whatever the case might be. So this scene, for me, is super effective. I was too busy paying attention to Tess's sacrifice to be bothered by the rest of it, because to me, that was super meaningful. And so she has a couple of great lines. It's like our luck had to run out sooner or later, and save what you can save, right? I mean, those are great lines. She knows she's going to die. And
just give him a moment.
she's trying to convince Joel. She knows she has to convince Joel, and she knows that Joel can do it, right? So she pulls out every stop to convince Joel that this is important and see it through.
Super quick, while Dad was talking about that conversation, one of the lines in the game is, guess what, Joel? We're bad people. We are, so she said that earlier on to Ellie. She says, we're not good people.
Yeah.
No, she says it to Joel, too.
Oh, did she? I missed that line.
She does. We're bad people. We've done bad things. This is a chance for redemption.
Yep. Never mind. I missed that.
So,
it was super subtle, but yeah.
It was super subtle. I mean, but I look for those things and I catch it. And I'm telling you, that is what emotionally makes a story strong, is when you appeal to those core values. And to me, they did an excellent job of that. And I'll probably just have Amber cut out all the emotional stuff.
So if you're wondering what we're talking about, Randy had a moment.
Yeah, I had a moment. So if that's missing, now you know why.
It's fine. We're gonna keep it in here.
It's good. It's good to be so in touch like that, to really be effective. And it's a testament to the effectiveness of this scene that you can walk away from it and just describing it still pull something out of you. And I think you're good on the writers and the directors for really pulling that in such a. We only had Tess for 2 episodes, and hardly even 2, 1.5.
And she becomes an indelible character in our memory, and that's why I risked talking about it, because they did such a great job of it, and it's so powerful. So yeah.
All right, so now let's move on to favorite scenes. Who wants to go first?
I'll go. So my favorite scene is still Joel and Ellie on that ladder and him glancing. Even though that's only seconds and it's so subtle, that is still my favorite. Most impactful is obviously Tess's sacrifice. That is an amazing scene. So I'm not going to call it my favorite because, it choked me up and everything. But really good. And maybe one of the standout scenes in the story for the season, at least for me.
Yeah, I think the big sacrifice was put down as my favorite scene, at least as far as having an emotional draw. And that's what I'm here for, because I know that this is a zombie show, but it should be one of 2 things. Either deep emotion, we're really seeing that pull or that growth, or we're being chased by zombies. So my second favorite scene was being chased by zombies. The clickers. I liked that. It reminded me of Jurassic Park with the kids in the kitchen hiding from the velociraptors. It was just like that. And also Quiet Place came to mind, but I hated that movie so much, so I didn't I didn't want to think about that one. But yeah, but I definitely agree. The big sacrifice, that just goes to show you how important these lasting core values are in storytelling. They resonate with people. And for it to have been the favorite scene of at least 2 of us sitting here, it says something.
Yeah.
Oh, my time. I don't know my favorite scene.
How about a favorite part? Something that you were like, yes, I loved that bit.
I think it's got to be the scene right after Tess is infected, the scene on the ladder that my dad mentioned. Also just because that also has a really good, beautiful shot. I love some good scenery, guys.
All right, let's move on to predictions. And in Lucy, your case, something you're looking forward to without spoiling too much.
Spoil everything.
I'm not sure what I have on a prediction. Obviously, we're well past the point of predicting that Joel and Ellie are going to get along well, and they're going to cling to one another, and they're going to become a new family. Mm-hmm. So, that's obvious just from everything in the show. So that's not really like a prediction. Well, they didn't say... Where did they say they were going to go?
They're going to Bill and Frank's.
Bill and Frank's? Mm-hmm. Is that a restaurant?
No,
I'm all for that.
That's who they mentioned in the first one. That's
I know.
their smuggler friends.
All right, and they're going to go to Bill and Frank's, and I don't know, maybe Bill and Frank are dead too. That's kind of the pattern normally in a lot of these stories. You go and you go and you go. It becomes this very long quest because everyone's dead or dying or infected or something.
Okay. For me, I think that one of 2 things is going to happen. Either they get to Bill and Frank's and they won't take Ellie, or they can't take her to where she needs to go, and then Joel is going to have to take her instead. And at this point, I really want to see that Joel decides to take her by choice, because up until now, he's been taking her, for the most part, because there's no other choice. They want the battery. The first time that he takes her on his own by choice, we see is when Tess tells him to get going. Well, you could say that wasn't really his choice because the infected are coming. They gotta go. Tess is dead. So I want to see him decide for some reason to take Ellie, whether it's because he wants to protect her or it's because he wants to see a cure be made, or if it's because he wants to honor Tess's last wish to see that, maybe there's some hope in the future. I just want him to make the decision to do it because up until now he's been pretty passive, and I'd just like to see him do something because he wants to do it.
Okay, I like that. I'm going to change my prediction to that. And then add that Bill and Frank, right, they're not going to let her in because she's infected, because they'll like, I'll test her and she'll show up red. And then they leave, and then Bill and Fred, who's it?
Frank,
and,
yeah.
Okay, they all die. They get eaten by zombies. So that's my prediction.
So
now.
still death and destruction. More death.
But it'll be death after they visit instead of before they visit.
Ah, I like that. It's a change of pattern.
You got to change that death pattern around some.
Yeah, have it happen after the visit, not before. Perfect. Everyone will love that.
And then the third one, the death will happen during the visit.
Ooh. Well, we kind of had that, but it would still be a change in the pattern, so it still works. All right, how about you, Lucy? Something you're looking forward to that you think will happen next without too many spoilers.
I'm interested in Frank, because Frank's kind of new to the show.
Oh.
No.
Kind of new.
Okay.
But I'm interested in learning more about Frank.
All right.
Well, I would be too if he was new to the show.
Yeah.
Right.
I would hope that they keep him in honoring whatever his role was before, just like make sure.
Well,
again.
I say kind of. He didn't have a whole lot of a role.
Okay, so he was there.
He was kind of mentioned.
Okay.
But you didn't actually see his character.
All right. That's
what I'm interested in, is seeing Frank. Not more Frank, just Frank.
Okay. Cool. All right, I think that's it. Do we have anything else?
Yeah, we didn't rate it.
Oh, yeah, rating it. That's right. I should have written that down. Rate episode. All right, guys, what do you think?
Again, I'm going to do 9.5 because I still very, very much liked it. And I like how they're doing the tendrils.
Okay.
It's very, very creepy, and I like how they're doing it. But some stuff that I just, again, like better in the game. But yeah, still 9.5 for me.
The gamers approve. For me, I'm giving it a little bit of a notch down. I'm giving it like an 8.5. Only because I felt like I noticed so much more that wasn't believable or consistent, and Ellie bugged me. But again, it was still so good. It was very, very enjoyable. I do hope they fix some of these little things along the way because I want to have nothing to complain about. But yeah, 8.5, but a very high 8.5.
It appears we've had a little technical malfunction. My rating for this episode of The Last of Us was going to be a 9.5, but Amber's kind of talked me out of that with the problems that she mentioned and a couple of the problems that Lucy mentioned. So I'm going to go with a 9. That's the same as what I did last episode. I still think it's a great show, and I'm really excited to watch the rest of the season.
How would you rate this episode? Let us know in the comments below. Tell us what you liked or disliked. We respond to just about everybody. Anyway, please do subscribe. It helps us a lot. And come back and see us next time. Later.